Well, a year-long study on the impact of government regulation on poverty and entrepreneurship in Indiana is out, and it has some interesting findings. Lead researcher Dr. Doug Noonan studied all 92 Hoosier counties and found that things like regulations, permitting, licensing really hurt the working poor. For more on the study and what Indiana can do to improve the business climate for small businesses, pleased to be joined by IUPUI economist Doug Noonan. And Doug, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
I think this is a very interesting study, and you talk about a new face of poverty in Indiana. What do you mean by that?
Well, we're 5 years out after the end of the Great Recession, and we're still looking at poverty rates that haven't come down where they were a decade ago. It used to be a decade ago, 1 in 11 Hoosiers in poverty. The rates are now still over 1 in 7. And we've got 7 counties in Indiana that still have over 20% poverty rates.
There might be people who would be maybe surprised to consider entrepreneurship being a vehicle for maybe breaking that cycle of poverty.
Well, looking at this new face of poverty, as we put it, we've got to look for some new solutions and new ways out. And we're trying to widen the pathways out of poverty. And it looked like entrepreneurship holds some substantial promise, whether it's for micro entrepreneurs, low-income entrepreneurs, or other entrepreneurs who can bring opportunities to the lower income.
And you talk about, you looked at all 92 Indiana counties, and you talk about entrepreneurship as being, somewhat of the great equalizer as these communities try to get out of poverty.
Yeah, it was a great quote. We're talking to people out in the field who said, entrepreneurship as the great equalizer. It's a chance that people who can't otherwise get into the game, they can start getting into it. And what we need to worry about are then the barriers and things that are erected there to stop them. And as long as we can take these things down, it's a great way to have this great equalizer.
And we should be clear here too, we're talking about entrepreneurship and innovation, which we talk a lot about with the tech companies and those types of things. We're talking about things all the way down to the food trucks and salons and those
hair
types
salons
of places,
and nail, but there's a lot, the opportunity to open up to something as simple as a food truck.
Yeah.
And being able to pursue your dream and be able to create jobs that way, create value, and help you achieve some self-sufficiency.
And as you look at these young, not always young, but many times young entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs getting into business, trying to grow a business, the barriers that they confront in terms of when it comes to regulations.
Yeah, there's some serious challenges, and it's a shame when we have barriers that don't need to be there. But some of these barriers are much more daunting to the lower income, poor would-be entrepreneurs than they are to people who can afford lawyers, who can afford an accountant or a consultant. These people, they're faced with 14 different bits of paperwork. They have to take the photos of their employees to submit in order to get a license just to have a food truck. These kinds of things can be really daunting to the lower income.
Yeah, looking at a direct impact on the ability of these companies to many times just start up. You also look at or talk about means-tested safety net programs as sometimes being a deterrent.
Yeah, so they're going to be good. As far as I know, they're really good at what they do, and it's important and an essential role they're doing, but they're not necessarily primed to help people move forward and pursue those entrepreneurial dreams and get out of that safety net. They seem to be working, but then there are some drawbacks. Sometimes you can lose eligibility by doing things that an aspiring entrepreneur would need to do.
We touched on this earlier, and we talked about the great equalizer, but as you look at rural communities, there are a lot of communities in rural Indiana facing some real challenges. The entrepreneurship path, I think there's a feeling that can be a way out.
It absolutely can be. I think we get caught up with a lot of entrepreneurship as these sort of .com startups, and it doesn't need to work that way. These things can be as simple as just starting your home business or selling crafts and entering in a food market. Or there's a lot of things you can do at farmers markets and things like this that are really entrepreneurial and certainly accessible to the rural communities.
And quickly, we don't have much time left, but as you look at this situation and some very interesting findings here, and how Indiana stacks up with neighboring states.
Yeah, Indiana actually, in the latest poverty figures that came out, we fare pretty well. Indiana's poverty rates at the state level are lower than all of our neighboring states' poverty rates, but we're still way high compared to where we were even a decade ago. And so there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, very good. Some very interesting finding, the impact of regulations on poverty and entrepreneurship in Indiana. Doug Noonan, IUPUI economist. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right.